Hello, students. I hope you all are doing well. And in today's session, we'll be starting with the next poem, A Tiger in the Zoo, and that's been written by Leslie Norris. So, before starting with the poem, just let me give you a brief introductory part that what we are going to read in this poem. So, in this poem, the poet Leslie Norris she is trying to contrast a tiger when that's been kept in a zoo or in a concrete cell. On the contrary, on the other hand, if he would have been in a jungle, what he would have been doing. All right, so let's get going. Those who have purchased the books, I suggest to write the meanings, because in the poetry the meanings of the words, that is mandatory. Otherwise you won't be able to frame the answers if you are not familiar with the meaning of the word. All right. All right, starting with the first paragraph. He stalks in his vivid strips the few steps of his cage on pads of velvet quiet in his quiet rage. So, in this paragraph, what the poet says, he stalks in his vivid strips. Strips, what are the strips? That pattern on the back of the body of the tiger. In this paragraph, the poet says, the tiger that's been bound in a cage, that the tiger he's been prisoned in a cage, and the strips on his skin are clearly visible. What's the meaning of vivid? Something that is clearly visible, or you could say bright enough that you could see it at very first glance. All right, that's called vivid. Vivid is your very bright, something that is easy to look at. The poet says, the tiger that's been bound in his cage and strips on his skin are clearly visible. His claws on pads of velvet. What are the pads? Pads are his claws, those claws on which the tiger moves. On pads of his velvet quiet, his quiet rage. And what the poet says in these lines, that his claws look like pads of velvet. And what is velvet? That's a sort of a cloth, that is actually a cloth that is very soft to touch. And the poet says his claws look like pads made of velvet. On his claws of velvet he walks quietly within his cage, and along the boundary of his cage he walks on those velvet claws without making any noise. On pads of velvet quiet in his quiet rage. What the poet says, he moves very softly, or you could say steadily, on his claws that just appear to be made of velvet, as smooth as velvet, we could say. He is full of rage. What's the meaning of rage? Anger. The other meaning for rage is anger. He is full of rage but is quiet because of his helplessness. He is just helpless. He could not do anything about his situation. So he is just quiet and just moves about in the cage. Though he is very much full of anger, he is annoyed within, but he is quiet because of his helplessness. Alright, I hope that was clear. Moving on. He should be lurking in shadow, sliding through the long grass near the water hole where plump deer pass. Okay, in this line, what the poet says, first thing, who is he in these lines? He refers to the tiger. He should be lurking in shadow. What's the meaning of lurking? There are certain meanings of lurking. Over here, the meaning of lurking, you can write it over down. To wait secretly for someone, to went into hiding, and to wait secretly for someone to come across. All right. What the poet says, he should be lurking in shadow, sliding through the long grass near the water hole where the plump deer pass. Plump, okay. Other word is plump. What's the meaning of plump? Anything or anyone that's a bit, you could say, slightly fat. that's a bit fat or slightly fat, that's called a plump. The word for the meaning for the word plump is anything or anyone that is slightly fat, that just appears to be fat a bit. All right, that's called plump. Okay, what the poet says, he should be lurking in shadow, sliding through the long grass. The poet says, if that tiger would have been in a jungle, then what he would have been doing? He would have been lurking in shadow. He would have been hiding in long grass, waiting for his hunt. All right. Near the water hole. Okay, what's the water hole? Any water source that flows just about through the jungle. That's been referred to as a water hole. Near the, he would have been waiting, hiding in the long grass near the water hole where the plump deer pass. Okay, now the poet says, the tiger, because of his nature, the tiger is ambushed in his hunt. He doesn't attack by challenging his prey directly, as we have seen some. You might have come across on Discovery Channel or anywhere else. He lies in the shades of trees or long grasses, and according to the poet, if he would have been in a jungle, he would have been lurking in the shadow in the long grass near the water hole, where generally the animals that pass by, and he should have been moving quietly in shadows near some water source and waiting for some plump deer to pass that way, and he would have been waiting to catch his prey. All right, I hope that was clear. Next is, so it, next, he should be snarling around the houses. What's the meaning of snarling? To make some aggressive growl. What is growling? Aggressive sound, roaring sound, you could say. He should be snarling around the houses at the jungle's edge, burying his fangs. What are the fangs? What's the meaning of fangs? Those outwitted, or you could say merging out two long sharp teeth of the tiger that just emerges out of his jaws. Those are called the fangs. His claws, you understood, terrorizing the village. Okay, just let me go through the whole paragraph again. He should be snarling around the houses at the jungle's edge, burying his white fangs. What's the meaning of burying? And anything that's been not been covered, uncovered, you could say. Burying his white fangs, his claws, terrorizing the village. What's the meaning of terrorizing? Squaring the village. All right. What the poet says, that if the tiger would have been in a jungle, then while roaming, the tiger might come to the outer boundary of some of the forest, and at the boundary where some village has been established. He might have come across that established village at the edge of the jungle, bearing his white fangs. Fangs, I told you, those those uh, the teeth that are merging out of the jaws of the tiger. Those are called the fangs of the tiger. The tiger would have been growling in its low and intimidating voice. Intimidating is growling, roaring voice, and would scare the inhabitants of that village. And he would have been showing his claws, his white fangs, and making roaring sounds, and he would have been scaring the, terrorizing the residents, or you could say villagers that reside in that place, in that village. So in these three paragraphs, what we have read, what the poet has uh, tried to convey, that if the tiger would have been in a jungle somehow, then what he would have been doing over there. If the tiger would have been in its natural habitat, then what would be his circumstances? What would he be doing in that jungle, in that forest? All right. Now, in the next coming paragraphs, the reality, the contrast, the contradictory part. What is his actual current situation, and what is his reaction to those? circumstances. All right. Okay. What the poet says, but he is locked in a concrete cell. Concrete cell is anything hard that is made out of concrete or cement or anything. But he is locked in a concrete cell. Concrete cell, if we are to sum this word into one word, that is cage made out of concrete. All right. His strength behind bars. Bars of what? Bars of the cage, stalking the length of his cage, ignoring the visitors. But on the other hand, on the contrary, according to the poet, unfortunately, the tiger is not free in the jungle, but he is locked in a cage that's been made of concrete. Alright? And his strength behind bars, and his unbound strength is caged behind the bars of that cage. Stalking the length, what's the meaning of stalking? What is stalking? To move around, to move by the length of the, to move by the boundary of that cage, that is called stalking. There are certain meanings, there are certain different meanings of the stalking, but over here the meaning of stalking is just to move around you could say in an unpleasant way around the boundary of that cage in which the tiger is being kept. Now in this paragraph, what the poet says, but on the contrary, the tiger is not free in the jungle but's been kept in a cage made out of concrete, and his unbound strength, his strength behind the bars, his unbound strength is caged behind the bars of that cage, stalking the length of his cage, ignoring the visitors. And there, locked in the cage, he walks around arrogantly, you could say, angrily, ignoring the visitors, and just stalking by the bars, stalking by the length, stalking the length of that cage. He just tries to ignore the visitors that just come across to look at him in the zoo. And next is, he hears the last voice at night, the patrolling. I hope the meaning of patrolling you understood. He hears the last voice at night, the patrolling cars, and stares with his brilliant eyes at the brilliant stars. Now, what the poet says, as the tiger has been kept in a cage, so at the night time, that caged tiger hears to the last voices of the patrolling cars, and being locked in the cage, he looks towards the sky constantly, and he kept on staring the brilliant stars that are just shining freely in the sky, and those stars just appear to be as brilliant as his brilliant eyes. So just try to frame your own meanings. So in the last paragraph, just let me go through again. So basically in this paragraph, the poet says, at the night time he had to be content uh, looking at the stars with his brilliant eyes that just appear to be as brilliant as the stars. So that was the poem. I hope that was clear to you, and that would be all for today's session. Okay, thank you. Have a nice day.